Oh, Christ, that's the timer. I got to put that down there. If you're around this fellowship long enough, you will meet people along the way that will impact your life greatly. And you will get to know them as they will get to know you. Now, I have met such a man in my almost 5 years up here in the Santa Maria area. And it's unusual that you find someone that's been around as long as he has that still practices the principles of this program with such vigor, sincerity, and trust. And such a man we have tonight to share with us a portion of his story through the journey he has taken through the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. He is a very dear and good friend of mine. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Bill.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Evans, an alcoholic. I didn't know he had that in him. That's quite a surprise. Even his wife didn't know he had it in him. I'm kind of like tonight the young sheik and once inherited his father's harem. He looked over the situation and said, I don't know what to do about this, but I sure know where to start. That's the way I feel. I don't know what to do about this, but I got a starting point. This is the second meeting that I've had the opportunity of being a part of today. Many of you here know our good friend Denny Glines. Passed away last Friday. It was a week ago. And they had a memorial service this morning at 11 o'clock for him. It was a regular AA meeting. The steps were read. The traditions were read. The serenity prayer was said. And the Lord's Prayer at the end was sung. It was very instrumental to have had the opportunity of being a part of Denny's memorial service. He was a great friend of mine, a great friend of AA. The only difference between he and myself, he was chronologically a little bit older than I was. Oh, I am. I forgot to tell you, I looked in the obituaries this morning and I didn't see my name there, so I knew that I was still around. Denny was 81 years of age on the 20th of October, and my birthday, natal birthday, is 8 days later on the 28th of October. And I used to refer to Denny as the old man in AA around Santa Maria. I'd known him for 30-some-odd years, and we'd been very close in every respect as far as Alcoholics Anonymous was concerned. His birthday in AA was on April the 10th. April the 2nd. It jumped up a few days there. Mine was 18th of February. And every birthday that I had, I always kidded him about being sicker than I was because it took him longer to get to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous than it did me. And he'd always retaliate with the fact that I didn't have quite the fortitude that he had. If I had, I'd have hung around about as long as he did. A little something about myself. I'm 81 years of age. I've had something over 32 years in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been married to this lovely woman over here, Margaret, for 59 years. Don't you think I've stood up on it pretty good? As I said, I come into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous in February the 18th of 1953, and we've worked this thing together over the past 30 some odd years. It's been a great journey. It's the most awesome thing that I have ever in my entire life encountered. I don't know of any place, anywhere, at any time, that I would ever have had the opportunity of finding the things that I found in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. God has certainly been good to us over the years. And as I look back over it from time to time, I realize that I almost missed it all on account of booze. I was a running drunk. And I'd like to share with you one of the great miracles of Alcoholics Anonymous as far as our family is concerned. I might tell you that our family is made up of 2 boys, 2 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. And this is a thing that I almost missed, the kind of booze. And the love and the respect that these people have for me today. It's a feeling that I couldn't have ever received in any other place than through the efforts of a bunch of drunks. That's the awesome thing about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd like to tell you how I found this program. "33 years ago, I was on my last drunk, running. I made 2 trips across the United States and back. On the last trip, in the state of Georgia, where we originated from, I used to be a school teacher, a basketball coach, and on this last drunk, I knew of a fellow there that I'd been very intimate with during some of the years of my teaching and coaching. He was a young fellow at that time that I had once one of the stars on my basketball team. And from time to time, I'd have to kick him off the basketball team because of drinking. And he'd come back, start off, be very good for a short period of time, and then get drunk again. And I knew on this trip, on this drunk that I was on, that I could find this feller and we could get out and get some booze and have a lot of fun. And I did. I found him. And I started talking to him, and he started to reply by telling me his story of how he had found the program of Alcoholics Anonymous 4 years before that. Naturally, being a drunk and a running drunk at that particular time, I didn't want to have anything at all to do with him, so I left very quick and went on my way. On this particular drunk, I got 4 jobs teaching school, hanging around about a month or 6 weeks or 2 weeks in each one of these places and not being particularly satisfied, or the weather was bad, or the principal wasn't good, or I couldn't find any booze around that town, so I'd move on. On the last place that I was in, the superintendent of schools of that particular county come out to me one day after I'd been there, I think about 3 days or 4 days, and said that the Board of Education was going to meet that night in regard to my drinking. And if I were you, I would resign before the meeting starts. So I took him at his word, went down to the place where I had been staying, got my clothes and suitcase and threw it in the back of the car and headed to California. In about 5 days, I arrived in Bakersfield, hung around there for a short period of time, and come out to Cuyama one night, or one morning rather, where we were living at that particular time, or where Margaret and Bob were living at that particular time, and knocked on the door. Margaret come to the door and flipped the latch on, the light on, opened the door and said, "Oh, it's you. You can't come in." I said, "Oh, yes, I can. This is just as much my house as it is you, as it is yours." She said, "Brother, there's been some changes made." And I stuck my foot in the door to keep her from slamming the door. And she said, "You can come in, but you're going to go right back to the back room and stay there. I don't want anything or any static out of you whatsoever." So I did. And for some reason or other, the next day she was out doing something, and I started rambling around in a purse looking for money. But instead of finding any money at all, I guess she'd put it in the washing machine like she had done many times before. I found a little ad in there that she had put in the Bakersfield Californian that she was not responsible for anybody's debts other than mine. That is hers. And on the other side of that little ad was the number of Alcoholics Anonymous in Bakersfield. To this day, I have only one answer to that. So I left the next Monday morning, or Tuesday morning, I don't remember which. She can tell you more about that than I can. And I was getting ready to leave. She come out to the car and made this statement. I trust and hope somewhere along the line that you'll find yourself. And that's the last word that I heard from her before I drove off. I drove on over to Maricopa and bought a pint of booze, drank on that for a while, and went on over to Cottonwood Road, which is just off a green field. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. If you do, you know where it is. Went over on Cottonwood Road and pulled off on the side of the road and went to sleep. How long I slept, I don't know. I had no idea. But anyway, I'd killed that pint of booze. And I come back over to Greenfield at the old Palms liquor store. It's still there, still in business. And bought another pint of booze. And I decided I'd go downtown and see some of my dear friends that I had left years before. So I started looking for them, and for some reason or another, I couldn't find them. But while I was gone on this drunk, Bob and Margaret had been staying at some place there down on one of the streets in Bakersfield. I didn't know where it was. And I started looking for it. And I go down the street and knock on doors and ask if this was a place where Margaret and Bob had been staying. And I run into one place, and I like to scare a fellow to death. I later found out that he'd been drinking the day before and the night before, and there was a 12-step call being made on him at that particular time. And when I asked him if Margaret had been there, I'd like to scare him to death. But that wasn't the place. But I, persistent as a drunk is, I continued on down the street and finally run into the place. And this lady said, yes, this is the place. And I told her I wanted to thank her very much for being so kind to Margaret and Bob while I was gone. And while we were sitting there, she got a telephone call. And this is another amazing thing. Margaret didn't tell me about this for quite a while after we'd been on the program. And she had called this woman from Whammer and told her, if I come by, for God's sakes, don't let him stay. And we were talking at the same time. So I talked to her for quite a while and thanked her for all the kindness that she'd been to them where I'd been away, and started back uptown and went to the old Padre Hotel, where I used to do a lot of drinking there in the bar. But instead, they always had a bank of telephones there. I went over to the telephone and called Alcoholics Anonymous, remembering this number that I'd seen on this ad that she's carried all of these years, not looking it up in the telephone book. And the fellow at the other end of the telephone answered, and I asked him if he could do me any good. And he said, hell no. If you want to help yourself, we are ready and willing to help you in any way that we possibly can. Knowing myself at that particular moment, if it had been anything else other than this, that I would have told him to take the thing and go to hell with it, that I wanted no part of it. But I didn't. I asked him what time the meeting was. He told me it was 8 o'clock. At 7:30, I was there waiting for the meeting to start. And in walked this feller that I'd knocked on the door down on one of the streets that I was looking for Margaret. And he was surprised himself to see me, and I was surprised to see him. I'd like to say that he stayed sober, but he didn't. It's one of the tragics of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Many of us are chosen, but only a few reap the benefit of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Last Wednesday night we were talking down at the meeting at the bank about visiting, going back and visiting over our lives as a drunk. And this is what I like to do tonight, to go back and visit and find out what this is all about. And I've had the opportunity of going back to this fellow that I saw in Georgia and telling him of the fact that he was one of the instrumental people in me reaching the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know for a long, long time what had happened to me that day. I think I'd have been around the program something like a year and a half or 2 years before it all occurred to me just what that had taken place at that particular moment there in the old Padre Hotel in Bakersfield when I went to the telephone and called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I realized after all these years, or a year and a half or 2 years, the time that I'd been a part of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, this is a great fact that we find in this program, that this was a spiritual awakening that had occurred at that particular time. This was a moment of clarity that we talk about in the big book that we have, even though we might be drunk at the time in which I was. But there was a short moment in there that this vision of this telephone number appeared, and I had the opportunity of calling Alcoholics Anonymous. And since that day, until this very night, and we have been associated with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, life has continued to be better. As the big book tells us, as we go along in this thing, more and more will be revealed. I knew nothing at all about Alcoholics Anonymous. Had no idea what it was. Had no idea what it had to offer. But I accepted, excuse me, I accepted that night when I went into that meeting, there was something there that I wanted. And I used to talk about it quite a lot, that thing that's in the room of an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, the thing that prevails there, the spirit that prevails there, the feeling that prevails there, the caring, the understanding that prevails there. Thank you. This is a thing that we find, and I accepted that thing on blind faith. Because after that first meeting, there was an Al-Anon woman that was there at that particular meeting that came up to me and told me something that I'd never known before, never realized it over the years. that an alcoholic or a drunk of my type were the most lonely people in the world. You could be in a crowd of 10,000, no matter where you were, or you could be in a room full of people, and you'd be completely alone. I never realized it until that night, in a whole vision of my life. I could look back from the time that I had become an alcoholic or a drunk, and could see the things that you were talking about. How I used to sit out under the orange trees there in Bakersfield with a pint of booze, having all these visions of fancy and living in fairyland and wondering what it was all about. I had a favorite spot in Bakersfield that I used to visit. Go up on top of the hill back up there where the college is today, junior college, and you could look out over the complete valley back to the Tehatchee Mountains and dream this dream that we have, the dream of grandeur, of the great big white house with a big veranda on it, sitting in a rocking chair, back there with a mint julep, cool and collective, looking over that valley of the vast holdings that I would have, and all of those mass number of people were out there working for me. It was great. But the next morning, you wake up and where's it gone? So you have to start to drink again. And this is the life of an alcoholic. They told me when I got there, the same thing that my wife told me one time and I got mad about it, that you're sick, that you're afflicted with a disease, the disease of alcoholism. It's a mental obsession, an allergy of the body. The mental obsession, I didn't know anything at all about until they told me in very plain language that you're nuts. That you're absolutely nuts. The allergy of the body, they explained, I could understand it. Then once I take a drink of booze, I had to have another one. And this is the way it was. And this is the thing that I learned in the first meeting that I attended. It wasn't all of the barrels that I drank over the years that was doing the job. It was that first drink that I took. But it took me some time to ever realize just what they were talking about. And I could remember this last drunk that I was on, where it started. I'd been sober, I wouldn't say sober, but been dry for quite some time. And it was hot in Bakersfield, and we decided we would drive over to the coast with the kids, have a picnic. And we did. We drove over to Cayucas, or somewhere in that vicinity. And we had a good time, cool, collective, and started on back. Got over around Shandon there at one of the service stations. Many of you know where the cafeteria or cafe is out there. And we decided we'd stop in and get something cold to drink. And we got the boys and Margaret a cold drink, and I got a can of beer. And I remembered that this was a starting. After that first beer, I had to have another drink. And that drink lasted for a year. That's when I got to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, after a year of constant drinking. We think of the spiritual awakenings that we have, and it's a great revelation to know that we can find that this prevails within the realms of an Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. It's as real as anything that we've ever encountered. There's nothing mythical about it. God isn't out there in space somewhere looking down on us, as I used to think. Every time that I'd tell a lie, he'd mark something down against Bill Evans. Every time that I'd do a wrong deed or steal something, he'd put a mark down. But I come to find out through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that God prevails with each and every one of us. And that this God that we find in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, that we can understand, that we don't need anyone to go before us, but we can find it within ourselves. And I hope and trust that the new people that are here tonight can find over the years, or find tonight, what I have found in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I will share with you a little bit later on. This is a great fact for us, and we have a compassion. This is a thing that I found. This is a great fact that we have an understanding. We care. We care about your life. And thank God that I didn't come in here or come down here to try to save any souls. What we are primarily interested in is in your life. And your life is near and dear to every one of us. And this is a thing that they told me when I got to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We were very fortunate in the respect that there were a group of people there when we got to the program that had been around for 4 or 5 years at that time, that took us under their wing by the hand, said, "Come follow us, and we'll show you the way." And they did. There were many days that we had that were very painful. And I like to say tonight that anybody that's sober up on the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you don't hurt, you got some more drinking to do. The pain that you suffer in sobering up is far greater than the pain that you have in the hangovers that you get up in the morning and have to take a drink to relieve that pain. The thing that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is real. And the only way that you can get rid of that pain is by following the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, accepting the fact of what you are. And that's a great revelation to us, to find that accepting what we are. And that's what I found when I come to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. There are 3 things that I like to talk about, the 3 cardinal virtues: faith, hope, and charity. A little bit in reverse to that order. I like to think about hope in the beginning. Here's a person that come to us, and you can see in their eyes that they are bewildered. They don't know what direction to go. Booze is a very important factor in their lives, as it was mine. You live to drink, and you get in a state of mind that the only way that life can be is to drink. And you go out and you begin to seek out everything else that you possibly know of. You fight this thing day in and day out. The next time it's not going to be quite as bad as it is today. It's going to be a little bit better. Never realizing just how baffling that this booze is. It gains completely control of our lives. And we keep hoping that we might find something else. We drink only beer. That's the answer. We find that that's no better than the booze that we've been drinking. We get just as drunk. We get just as bewildered. We drink only wine. The same thing appears before our eyes. And we go to brandies. Anything that have alcohol in it. Then we begin to try different types of religion. And we go in there and they pray over us. And they cry over us. And they wonder. And we can't find the answer there. We go to the doctor. The doctor tells us if you don't drink so much, you won't get drunk. But he doesn't know the alcoholic. He doesn't know the fact that if I take a drink today, that I got to have another one. What alcoholic in this room tonight will start with just one drink? Let's see your hand. One drink. You wouldn't give a dime for it. Not one drink. Neither would I if I'm going to drink. Then you go to the psychiatrist. And he tells you that you got a mental problem. That you can go out and drink if you want to, as long as you keep your attitude in such a manner that you don't get drunk. Little does he realize the fact that you got this allergy, and one drink calls for another. And you keep trying and trying, so you fall into Alcoholics Anonymous. Is the last hope. And you find people in here begin to talk about you, tell you just exactly what booze is doing to you. That once you take a drink, you got to have another. And you think that you're right. This is a thing. I've never seen an alcoholic in my life that come to the program that didn't think that he was great. We could do anything. But the hope is the realization that we find in this thing that people are talking our language. They're telling us what we are. And we gain a little faith that these people know what they're talking about. They don't condemn us for the things that we have done. They let us discover it ourselves. We take an inventory. But in the beginning, we admit. How many alcoholics or how many drunks out there ever admitted before getting to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that you had a problem? That booze was the answer. It was not your problem. It was the people. It was the places. It was the things, not the booze. Those were the things. So people began to tell you that your life had been unmanageable. You couldn't manage it. You couldn't stay out of jail. You couldn't stay out of trouble. You didn't have any money. You got fired. And all these good things that goes with a good drunk. It's great. It's a great life. Then people began to read your mail, tell you what you are, but they let you discover that yourself. They tell you to take an inventory. And you start to taking the inventory. I never stole anything in my life, somebody will say. I never lied. I was a truthful person. Everything, every place that I went, I told the truth. There's not a drunk here tonight that hasn't told a lie or to try to cover up a lie. That's the nature of the beast. We justify our actions. And we begin to realize that these people know what they're talking about. Then they tell us to go down there and look at ourselves. And this was a great discovery to me, to take an inventory of myself, to see where I was and what I was. I was a thief. I was a bum. I was a proverbial liar. I was a cheat. And all the good things that go together to make up what we call an alcoholic or a drunk. I like Bill Wilson's description of what an alcoholic it is. He's a drunk. And then we began to get a little faith in these people, that they know what they're talking about when they tell us that it's the first drink that gets us drunk. It's not the drinks that we take afterwards. And by gaining a little faith in the people, we began to gain a little faith in ourselves. That through the help of these people, by sharing their lives, their intimate lives with one another, that we can find the answer to what the problem is. This is again a great fact that we find in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we look at ourselves, and we're not the great intellectuals that we thought that we were. We're just a human being. And we find out we have certain limitations. Al and myself was talking at the dinner table tonight just about we could be in most anything in the world that we wanted to be. My profession was a school teacher. I taught school for a long, long time before getting fired or asked to be resigned. And I become a great engineer, industrial engineer. Went to work for a pipeline company. And I continued to drink. And along the line, somewhere, the people there I didn't like, so I walked off of the job. They weren't doing the things that I thought they should do. So I went into the aircraft business. No wonder some of these airplanes during World War II wouldn't fly. They had so many people like me working on them. I've become an industrial engineer. At that particular time, I didn't know one brad from a bolt or what a rivet was or anything, but yet I was an industrial engineer checking on how that the B-29s were built. Then at one time, I become an hydraulic engineer. Having worked on a pipeline, I should know something about hydraulics. So I went to work for Standard Oil Company and worked for them for a short period of time. And I didn't like the way that they were treating me, so I resigned. I walked off again. And this is my story, from one place to another. But yet, in walking into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, they told me that I had certain limitations. And through the limitations, I began to get faith. Faith in the fact that I am a school teacher. And I know that I'm a school teacher. And I was a pretty good school teacher until I started drinking. And I went from one school to another, getting fired from one school to another. That's why I got out of it. But thank goodness, through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the faith that I found here, I had the opportunity to retiring 14 years ago as a school teacher. This is a thing that we find, faith. Then charity comes along. We get a whole bundle of this stuff. We find and become acquainted with ourselves, and the new person that comes in, we want them to have the same thing. And as the big book tells us, the only way that we're going to do anything at all about this thing is to give it away. And that's what we have to do. If you want the benefits of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've found over the years that the only way that I can keep it is to give it away. And we reached a stage in the program today that something has been taken away from us. And that's the 12-step calls. We used to be able to go on at least one step call a day in the early periods of Alcoholics Anonymous. We go out there and see that wet drunk. And it's a great revelation to look at that person and say, there, but for the grace of God goes me. I've seen so much of that over the years of my association with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I loved it, loved every bit of it. Yeah, a lot of people talk about their babies in AA. They don't have any. Never have had any. Don't expect to have any. I'm not God. I can't sober anybody up. The only thing I have to offer is my experience as a drunk and my experience that I've had since being a part of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's all that I have. And what have I found? I found through the program and through people, as I said in the beginning, a bunch of drunks. They've shown me how to live. And what I am. By taking an inventory, is the first time in my whole adult life that I've ever had the opportunity of being acquainted with Bill Evans. And this is a gift that was given to me in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That I've become acquainted with myself. And that's a great discovery. to be able not to know yourself. I don't say that. I don't think there's any person in any place that will ever in any way know themselves completely. But to become acquainted with oneself is a great discovery. To know what I am, that I'm a human being, that I was placed on this earth for something that might someplace. As Margaret often remarks, that along the line, since we have been a part of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, we have had more people to come into our lives than the average person meets in their entire life. And you know, this is one of the greatest things that has ever happened to us, that we can travel across this great country of ours and go into any city, any place, anywhere, and walk into a group of people just like this, and we're at home. It's great to be at home. I like to think about this at this time of year because of the fact that I was on my last drunk at this time of the year. Rambling, not knowing where I was, not knowing what purpose I had in life, not knowing what life had in store for me. And I had to come to a bunch of drunks to give me the answer. And that's what alcoholic is all about. That's what we are here for, to try to share our innermost selves with the sick alcoholic. There's a couple of things that I like to talk about in the big book, in the preface of my book, which is the first printing of Alcoholics Anonymous. On the first preface, there's a statement that emphatically states that the first 100 people stayed sober on the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is how that they done it. Then we go to chapter 5, and we read there a portion of chapter 5, and it says, "Rarely have we seen a patient fail who has thoroughly followed our path." And then at the back of the book, there's something that will keep a man or a person in everlasting ignorance, and that is contempt prior to investigation. And I hope that the new people that are here tonight will bear that in mind. Investigate this thing. Investigate the people that are associated with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. See what you can find and join us. See that your own house is in order and great events will come to pass. This is a great fact of Alcoholics Anonymous. God has been good to me and to my family. We have an opportunity every year to get together, the entire family. Margaret, myself, the 2 boys, the 2 grandchildren, and the two great-grandchildren. And to think that I almost missed it. So one drink of booze. I can take all of these things that I've gained over the years, stack them up over here, pour out one shot of booze over here, on the right, in a glass, look at it. Do I want this or do I want that? It's my choice. This is a thing that Alcoholics Anonymous has given to me, a choice. I can drink if I want to. But if I drink, I want to have all of these things, the trust of people, the faith in humanity, the faith in myself, and the love, and the understanding. Do I want to do that? Do I want to give it up? It's my choice, and it's your choice. I like to think about the carpenter, the young man, the Last Supper. They said that in my Father's house there are many mansions. And I like to think along the line that these mansions are love, compassion, understanding, faith, trust, and a great volume. And the great discovery that I found in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, that I didn't know what it was until I got here, and that is love. Through all the years, I thought love was possessing something, having it, grasping it, putting it in my pocket, building an edifice toward it. But I come to you people, and you taught me what love was. And to me, my description of love is being a part of. And I'm a part of the Alcoholics Anonymous program. And I'm a part, and you're a part of my life. Without you, I would have nothing. With you, I have the world. And may the blessings of God be with each and every one of you. And thank you for being here tonight.